And we are back here on First Bite, breaking down Lions Vikings Week 3 matchup here with Arif Hasan of Pro Football Network now. Let's jump, and I want to work kind of from backwards to front in terms of the Vikings defense versus Lions offense, and start with an injury that could kind of have a big impact here. Harrison Smith suffered a concussion late on Monday night, has not practiced through Wednesday or Thursday, which means not going to say he's doubtful to play, but he's kind of got to hurry through the concussion protocol at this point. So how big of a loss would it be if Harrison Smith can't go in this game? And does that mean we get to see Lewis Cine pretty much for the first time?
You'd think that, wouldn't you?
I would.
Okay, so this situation is pretty bizarre. Josh Metellus played more snaps than Lewis Cine did against the Eagles. I don't know what the deal is. I remember in training camp, he's consistently behind Cameron Bynum. That's like, okay, fine, he's a rookie. But I was talking to a couple of the other beat reporters and we were like, when is it time to begin worrying about this first round pick? Right. And then, there was like a perfect opportunity to play a bunch of 3 safety looks against the Eagles because they have a running quarterback. And I think that, if you've got a 5-person surface and 1 linebacker, you can replace your nickel corner with a safety and have like some really interesting options on defense. They didn't do it. Right. Mm-hmm. And then Harrison Smith gets a concussion and Josh Metellus is on the field. And I was like, oh, okay, well, something is happening here. And I think part of it might have to do with Lewis Cine's like knee, which was not on the injury report heading into the Eagles game, but has been somewhat of an issue for a couple of weeks now. But part of it might just be, it doesn't seem like he's picking up the defense quickly enough, which is very unusual because I was told he was one of the smartest safeties in that draft, if not the smartest safety in the draft. There's apparently some like Rhodes Scholar type that, not an actual Rhodes Scholar, but there's apparently another like super genius at safety. That's the only thing. But I was told he's a remarkably smart. And then you watch him on film at Georgia and he knows what the play is before the offense does. It's like wild how good he is at diagnosing. And it's just this very weird circumstance. And so I don't really know what's going on there. We might see a bunch of Lewis Cine. Maybe he's been, rotating in a little bit more often. Maybe he and Josh Metellus are competing for those snaps. I don't know. But it was interesting to see that it was Josh Metellus out there. Now, obviously, if Harrison Smith clears concussion protocol like Saturday night, right, he's going to be they're not going to like, oh, Harrison Smith wasn't part of the game plan, whatever. Like he's just going to be in there, right? But if that doesn't happen, I think that's going to be a somewhat significant problem for the Vikings, apparently, especially now that the Lions have like the best receiver in the NFL now suddenly. So that's a joke. I don't believe that at all.
I wish you would have validated it, Arif, but it's okay. Even though
okay, how about this? Combined, DeAndre Swift and Amon-Ra St. Brown have more yards from scrimmage than any other receiver running back pair in the NFL. That sounds cool, right?
Hey. Yeah.
There you go.
Back in our good graces, Arif. Okay, we can move forward with this podcast. So at cornerback, okay, Cameron Dantzler, former 3rd-round pick, and Patrick Peterson, who has just turned 30, I heard.
Happy birthday.
Yeah. Eternally 29, Patrick Peterson. But in the Eagles game,
eternally 24-year-old Matthew Stafford, right?
That's right.
I know. Hey, he's got that baby face and he's got Little Caesars money now. It's so funny how he becomes a Little Caesars ad dude as soon as he leaves Detroit.
He just wasn't big enough for a Detroit brand until he won a Super Bowl.
He didn't want to step on the toes of Detroit style pizza. I get it.
Man, God, guys, you want to just riff on this for the next 15 minutes? But no, I do want to talk about the Vikings secondary and their cornerback specifically because in the Eagles game, Arif, I'm making sure that I'm getting these stats correct, but Cameron Dantzler allowed 5 of 8 catches for just 31 yards versus the Eagles, and everyone else in the Vikings secondary was 16 for 16, 205 yards. So is Dantzler the only guy that can be trusted back there, or what's going on with the Vikings secondary?
So here's the secret. Not actually a secret. Dantzler got benched in the Eagles game.
Okay.
This is not the coaches making a mistake. This is PFF misassigning some of these mistakes.
Oh, okay.
Which I love PFF, right? I don't want to this is just a thing that happens. Sometimes these assignments are difficult. But I know for a fact, for example, that the Quez Watkins touchdown, the 56-yarder, I think it was like 56 yards. Again, I'm not like very great at like memorizing the specifics of numbers, even though I'm a analytics guy. That one was on Cameron Dantzler, who bit on the sail route, and it should have been Cameron Bynum taking on the sail route, with Kendricks being a little bit later to pass him on. Then Cameron Bynum taking on Quez Watkins on the deep route. That should have been Dantzler on the deep route. And so that 56 yarders on Dantzler. He also made another mistake. He passed off Ertz, I think. It was an in-breaking route. He passed off Ertz or some other player to nobody.
Or Goddard, right?
Yeah, it was Sorry, yeah. Ertz doesn't even. Yeah. What a duo that was.
Right.
Passed off Goddard to nobody. There was nobody over the middle, and he passed him off, and he shouldn't have. And so these are assignments that I think PFF didn't give to him. And so that looks a lot different, kind of like when Rondale Moore was assigned to Patrick Peterson last year against the Cardinals, also a week 2 game, and it shouldn't have been. He just happened to be the nearest defender, and so it looked like he was the one in coverage, and he wasn't. So that's part of it, right? Bynum is actually a very good player. I don't know that, he's going to be Harrison Smith or anything like that. But, I think that had Lewis Cine not had this like weird offseason where we don't quite know what the issue is, there's a really good chance that Bynum still would have been the starting safety. I mean, it was a surprise to a lot of Vikings fans when they drafted the safety. They expected Bynum to start. So he's a good player. And obviously Harrison Smith is a good player. We'll see kind of what happens there. And Peterson is also learning the defense. I hate saying that because he's a super smart veteran. But there were clearly some communication problems in the Eagles game and actually the Packers game, but Aaron Rodgers just didn't trust Christian Watson for some reason. And so a couple of open looks that Watson had, he didn't get the reception when Patrick Peterson was in coverage. And so there was like some issues there, but Peterson is fundamentally a good player. He just hasn't really played off coverage at all in his career. And now he's doing it, and it's apparently an adjustment. So once that gets figured out, I'm sure that he'll continue to play at a pretty good level, not like an elite level, not like what we associate with Patrick Peterson. But, this is a defense that's better suited to what his current physical skill set is. And once it gets acclimated to that, I think he'll continue to be a pretty high-level player. But I think that the rest of the secondary is a little bit better than those numbers give it credit for, and Cameron Dantzler is not quite as good as this. I mean, he did have a drive, though. Yeah. There was one drive where he was just
3 plays in a row
killing it, right? Like, I don't want to take that away. So once he knows, like, kind of what's going on, he could be a pretty good player. I should note that my last day at the Vikings facility, it was open locker room, and he, like, snuck through the door. Like, he didn't want to be talked to at all. And I think it's because he knew that play was his fault, and he didn't want to talk about it.
Well, yeah. So, I just as a quick aside, Arif, like, do you think that the Lions would potentially, if there's somebody that they're going to target, if there's somebody that they want to play bully ball with, like, would it be Dantzler, or would they take their chances with Patrick Peterson, who's trying to kind of get a feel for a newer style of defense for himself?
If they still had Marvin Hall, I'd say run him against Patrick Peterson. But,
oh my goodness,
I just love Marvin Hall.
And his 40 yards per catch average.
What a weird statistical figure.
How efficient.
Very efficient. No, I would say I don't know if I would necessarily target Patrick Peterson, because Amon-Ra St. Brown's capabilities stem from his like really efficient route running. Yeah. Less than, I mean, it's not like he's a slow player, but it's less about, his physical overwhelming capability, like a Christian Watson might have, right? And so I don't know that that would make a lot of sense, but I would attack whatever safety is replacing Harrison Smith if he's not ready to go, right? I think that if it does turn out to be Lewis Cine, like, yeah, he's a first round pick, but I mean, like, they didn't put him on the field. Let's see what the Vikings have. And so I would probably do that. And especially like, create some looks that force a safety into the box. I know the Lions are very good at that. And run at the guy. And, the Lions have maybe the most complicated run blocking scheme in the league right now. It sounds like a new safety is a perfect testing ground for that sort of thing. So I think that's who you might target in the secondary, both in the receiving game and in the running game.
Yeah, and Ted Wynn, by the way, over at The Athletic had a fantastic article about that. The complexity of the Lions run game and the diversity of what they can give. If you haven't checked that out, 100%.
Reminds me of like the Harbaugh 49ers, like how diverse that run game
is. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about the run game versus the Vikings run defense, because I don't know what to make of the Vikings run defense yet. It wasn't very good last year. It hasn't been very good this year, but at the same time, they're facing off against two of the most efficient running attacks in the Eagles and the Packers. So how much of that is just bad matchups against good teams, and how much of that is the Vikings run defense?
How much of that is they are the most efficient because they played against the
right?
Vikings?
But I mean, even going back to last year, the Eagles and the Packers, efficient running teams.
but yeah, it's 2-game sample and they both pop up. Maybe that tells you something.
Sure.
No, actually, in the first half, the Vikings were doing really well against the run, against the Eagles, despite apparently right now the Vikings are run with the lightest boxes in the league. And typically that's a sign of what opposing offenses are doing, right? Typically you match box numbers with box numbers, and the Vikings are like, nah, F that. Kevin O'Connell likes to throw the ball and he likes to defend the pass, right? Like that's kind of like the idea.
It's very opposite teams then at that point, because the Lions are a team that likes to run the ball and stop the run.
I'm very excited.
It's very weird. I mean,
yeah.
By most figures, it seems like the Vikings are kind of on the cutting edge there, but I feel like there's also this kind of undercurrent that says like, okay, well now everyone's trying to pass the ball. Now you got to zig where everyone's zagging, and so the Lions are in the forefront, which not sure I buy yet, but the league is cyclical.
It's been dead since the 70s. The running game is back.
Right. And we've been saying that for the past 20 years.
Yes, exactly. I think that they have a really good run defending front. But that can get overwhelmed. First of all, I should say Zadarius Smith is not really good at defending the run. He is basically a pass rusher.
Yeah.
And it's kind of curious because you look at his physical profile and he profiles much more as a run defending edge rusher. But yeah, he's just a pass rusher. Danielle Hunter is really good against the run, but really got beaten up against the Packers in that capacity. So I don't know if that's a persistent quality of his or not. Harrison Phillips, Dalvin Tomlinson, really great run defenders. Almost all of the Eagles' big running plays, at least with the running backs, came with them off the field. And so when you've got somebody like a James Lynch, the backup defensive tackle, or an Armon Watts in there, then there's going to be a lot of opportunities in the run game. But when Dalvin Tomlinson and Harrison Phillips are out there, it's going to be really difficult to run the ball. We saw that against the Eagles when the Vikings ran no one, well, I should say a 4-person box, but they were all in the line of scrimmage, right? No one in the box, and the Eagles were like, yeah, of course we're going to run the ball. And they got stuff like a 1-yard gain. That's pretty wild stuff, I think. Yeah. And then, you've got James Lynch in there, and it's like, okay, well, he not only weighs like 40 pounds less than Dalvin Tomlinson, he's just fundamentally not as technique sound either.
Yeah.
And, they get blown off the ball, right? And so part of that just has to do with how the difference between, the top line talent and the depth. And some of that has to do with what the priorities are. Some of that has to do with how willing the Eagles were to spread the ball out, because they did, go 4 wide with 1 back in the backfield and run the ball sometimes too. But yeah, there have been some difficulties against the run. I think that those difficulties have a lot more to do with, say, Jordan Hicks kind of adapting to the situation that he's in right now, and not being as good against the run as Anthony Barr, which was kind of a surprising outcome to me. But yeah, I don't know that I would write the book on what the Vikings run defense is right now. I'll just say when the backups are on the field, it's a disaster. And then also they should run it Zadarius Smith.
All right. Fair enough. I mean, the one other thing that I want to ask you, Arif, is if you're the Lions, and DeAndre Swift has obviously been playing so well. Somebody who hasn't been playing so well has been TJ Hawkinson, but those are the 2 guys I really view on the Lions that can put a stress in terms of matchup. They can put a stress on opposing defenses because, how are you going to match up with Hawkinson because of his, speed and size? How are you going to match up with DeAndre Swift because he's so, agile and whatnot? So if you were going to attack the Vikings defense at the second level, who are you more apt to do it with, TJ Hawkinson or DeAndre Swift, do you think?
I'd use the first couple of plays to figure out kind of what Jordan Hicks' job is and attack that, right? So if, for example, you put TJ Hawkinson on the field and Jordan Hicks more often than not is the guy that's being tasked with defending him, absolutely go mad. If you're, if that's not the case, but you've got the capability of getting up to the second level and getting him in the run game, do that. Jordan Hicks ended up with I want to say 14 tackles against the Packers, and feels like that's a pretty good game for a linebacker. And almost all of them came after he got blown out of his gap or after he allowed a reception. Right? It was clear that the Packers were comfortable kind of attacking where he was supposed to be, and I feel like that's not a bad strategy overall. He's a very athletic player and he's a very smart player. So maybe at some point he figures this out. Maybe he's lost a step. It felt like he might have lost a step against the Packers, but also he was a little bit slow to react. So I don't know what that was about. Slower to react than he was in Arizona or Philadelphia, by the way. So again, I don't know what that's about. But I would say that, in terms of trying to figure out what to do with TJ Hawkinson, it's to look at what matchups that you're generating with your looks, because I would still trust Eric Kendricks in that matchup like 100% of the time, whether it was against the run or in coverage. With DeAndre Swift, I think it's kind of the same thing. If he's the guy that, Hicks is falling, there's no chance Hicks has a chance of catching up with Swift in the passing game. Right. And so I think that you'd run a couple of wheel routes after you run some verticals and replace those wheel routes, or replace, those verticals with the wheel routes. And you've got some pretty good options available to you. But I think making sure that Dalvin Tomlinson and Eric Kendricks and Harrison Phillips and Danielle Hunter are not big parts of the game, I think that's kind of your best opportunity. And whether that comes through Hawkinson or Swift or whatever, I think that's kind of how you should approach that, because the drop off in performance thus far between Kendricks and Hicks has been really, I think, extraordinary.
All right, before we move on to our prediction portion here, I do want to talk about the Vikings pass rush. We've already talked about Zadarius Smith and Danielle Hunter, and they're kind of well-trodden territory here, and we know Denver's Decker and Sewell. It's a pretty solid matchup, but I want to talk a little bit about the interior. You mentioned the Vikings are pretty good in terms of run defending up the middle, but is there anyone in that group that might be a threat to the Lions' many reserves that'll probably going to be in this game in the interior in terms of pass rush?
Yeah, it sounds like Frank Ragnow might be healthy enough to play.
Yeah, they might get Frank back, but it looks like it's probably going to be Logan Stenberg, who has a collective 0.0, I think, PFF grade for 2 weeks.
Yeah, PFF grade 0.0. Yeah, in pass blocking.
In pass blocking, that's right.
Yeah.
And probably what's his name?
Is it going to be Dan Skipper?
It's probably going to be Dan Skipper again.
6'9" Dan Skipper.
That's right. Which
they wouldn't kick Evan Brown out or anything like that.
It's a possibility, but I think they like Evan Brown as just a pure center. But yeah, it's something to keep an eye on. I guess.
Yeah. Guys, I still can't get over Dan Skipper playing guard. It's just
crazy.
Wild to me.
It is wild, and he did well.
The interior matchups, I think, will also involve Zadarius Smith, given how much he, moves around. You're familiar with that, so that's going to be part of it. I think that there's just not a ton of pass rush up the interior. You've got Jonathan Bullard to some extent. You've got Armon Watts, both of them. If Bullard's healthy enough to play, I didn't actually check the Thursday report. I know he was on the Wednesday report. But if Bullard's healthy enough to play, I think that he actually does pretty well. You might remember him from his time with the Bears, where he was not as good, but he's actually been pretty good, both in camp and in the one game that he played for the Vikings. But Armon Watts has a lot of movement capability. I think you put him up against somebody that seems to have some trouble in pass protection, he'll produce, right? Put him in positions to win, he'll win. But he's not going to create his own wins. So what's interesting is that Dan Skipper is probably the kind of player that Watts would do all right against. They're both fairly tall, right? For the positions that they play.
Right.
Well, I mean, Dan Skipper's purely tall.
Correct.
That's not a relativistic question. But Armon Watts is, he's like 6'5". He's like a defensive end, but he plays defensive tackle. And so Dan Skipper might be the kind of player that he actually does a little bit better against, because he can generate, he's used to these leverage mismatches and stuff like that. And so he can actually get underneath. Whereas before, sometimes he wasn't able to get underneath, a 6'1" Coke can of a guard. Right. And so, he doesn't have to rely on physical strength to win some of these matchups. And that might be a good matchup for him. Especially because, Skipper can't use his length in quite the same way.
Right.
But yeah, if Frank Ragnow's healthy against Frank Ragnow, I don't know that I trust anybody in that interior to beat him in pass protection. Like I would love the Harrison Phillips, Frank Ragnow run reps. That's going to be fun to watch, but yeah, I don't expect Phillips or Tomlinson to beat him in pass rush. So I think that those are really going to be how the Vikings hunt for opportunities. And then they do a bunch of stunts and twists, tons of line movement, tons of complicated pass rushing paths. So that's going to be a big part of it too, to try and test the awareness of a lot of these players. Cause I don't know how good, I assume Stenberg is bad at picking up stunts and blitzes, but I don't know how good Dan Skipper is at that sort of communication. So
right.
We'll see about that.
Yeah, and I mean the fact that they're just shuffling as many guys as they have been through the first couple weeks of the season is going to obviously affect that chemistry. But let's get into our final segment here, the thing we call One Thing We Think We Know About the Game, where you make a prediction about any part of the game. Doesn't have to be the score, doesn't have to be the winner, just any part of the game. Ryan, I feel like we've been doing pretty good on these so far this year. I can't remember. I think you hit last week, didn't you?
I did not. I did not come close.
Just kidding.
Yeah, I said 5 total turnovers
That's
from
right.
the quarterbacks.
You were not close at all.
I don't think that was an awful number to throw out for a Jared Goff Carson Wentz game.
Yeah, I mean, I get it.
Here we go with the Jared Goff hate again.
A draft class rematch? Yeah, for sure. No, there's a bunch of bad blood, obviously.
I know. There's just
really
an ongoing
aggressive
meme that Ryan hates Jared Goff because he thought he didn't play well in the first half, which he didn't. But anyway,
well, that's one of the reasons. The other reason is because I'm jealous of his fiance.
That makes
Somebody
sense.
told me that. Yeah.
Okay.
That video was adorable. The Korea, it's their first win. Oh, that's so cute.
Yeah,
the little phone she gets to see it happen.
It's so funny that she's on the beach and all of us in Michigan have been surrounded by sub-zero temperatures.
She's doing her job.
No. It's just she's celebrating his first win on the beach, and we're just huddled.
That is a pretty good way to celebrate.
It's December, and it's okay.
Wearing Vikings
that monkey
colors,
off their back.
I want to point out.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, she doesn't get to pick. I mean, she's a model, right? The clothes are supplied for her, but still wearing Vikings colors.
Great analysis there from Arif.
Ryan, so I'm 1-1 basically.
You're 1-1. We'll count it.
Okay.
Let's try to make it 2-1 like the Lions here. All right. What's the one thing you think you know about Week 3 Lions versus Vikings?
Okay, here's something that I think I'm piecing together.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at Justin Jefferson's breakdown on his receiving depths. He's got 11 targets between 0 and 9 yards, and he's got 10 catches there. So he's got a lot of. I mean, the guy has a short area quickness to do some damage, especially in a quick passing game. I'm going to say that the Lions get 0 sacks against the Minnesota Vikings. For not only the reason that I think Minnesota is going to be able to get the ball out quick if they want to somebody like Jefferson who can take advantage of, I think, the Detroit Lions cornerbacks and press coverage. But I think the other thing, too, that's big and kind of understated, no John Kaminsky, who leads the team in pressures. So, Aiden Hutchinson still dealing with the Charlie horse. I don't know. Where's the pass rush going to come from? Because I haven't seen a whole lot of it. And I think this could be a game where the Vikings keep Kirk Cousins upright.
No.
Did John Kaminsky test as a better athlete than Hutchinson? I feel like he might have.
He might have.
Maybe relative to his size, too. If we can pull up some RAS numbers,
Wow. Yeah.
But no trust in Julian Okwara or Austin Bryant then, huh?
Oh, yeah, I'm on a Lions podcast. RAS numbers are huge here, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, brother.
Unofficial sponsor. All right. I'm going to throw it to you next, Arif. What is the one thing you think you know about Lions Vikings?
Yeah, I think I know that Justin Jefferson's going over 100. Which, I mean, given his career averages, maybe that's not actually a bold prediction. He is kind of a 100 game.
We like to go bold on these, but you don't have to go bold.
But
the name
more fun.
The name of the segment is one thing you think you know. It's supposed to be a confident prediction.
Let me change the color to purple real quick.
Okay.
There you go. All right, yeah. I think Justin Jefferson's going for 175.
Oh, okay. There we go.
The man coverage? This is a man coverage team? Come on.
They might switch it up a little bit.
Oh, will they?
I wonder how often they're gonna trust that zero blitz that they do.
Well, until it fails them, right?
I hope they don't do it this week, Arif.
It sounds like, hey, the Eagles were great with the zero blitz. I feel like they might center the game plan around that.
Jalen Hurts is a little bit more mobile than Kirk Cousins, right?
Well, yeah. Well, no, I'm saying the Eagles actually blitz. They had some zero blitzes against Kirk Cousins. Right.
Yeah. But I don't know. Lions secondary. I'm not sold on it yet.
Hey, they're not playing that bad.
Hey, don't believe in the Lions secondary. Believe in Dan Campbell, who believes in the Lions.
Believe in Aaron Glenn. You're supposed to be Aaron Glenn's biggest supporter here, Ryan.
Yeah, see, look at that. 175.
Guys, just leave me alone. I feel like you guys are picking on me. I'm just trying to shift everybody. Everybody's looking at me like harping on Jared Goff. I'm trying to get
someone in the chat just posted the RAS. It's 9.75 to 9.88.
There you go.
Close.
That's a good call. Nice pull, by the way. I love a good pull on RAS.
All right. The one thing I think I know is that Amon-Ra St. Brown's streak of 8 catches in a row will not be broken.
Oh my God.
Wait, is it a 2-game streak or are you going back to last season?
Oh, we're going back to last year. It's 7 or 8. He I think
8, I think.
He tied the record and now he has a chance to break it.
Does that include like games with like David Blower, however you say his name?
It sure
He's
does.
Viking now. I should be,
Well, Tim Boyle. Tim Boyle.
Oh, Packers legend.
That's right.
Yeah.
Tim Boyle ahead of Jordan Love on the depth chart. Tim Boyle.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. No, Tim Boyle can push Jared Goff for the starting job.
All right. This is going off the rails.
Was that a take you had or a take you saw?
That is a take that someone thought I had based on what I wrote, which is absolutely not what I wrote.
Fantastic.
Oh, I was talking. Remember the Packers beat writer who said that like?
Oh yeah,
Tim Boyle could push Jared Goff.
Yeah, there was that too. Anyways.
Oh, hopefully that wasn't Domofsky. I respect Domofsky.
I don't remember who it was. We're not gonna throw anyone under the bus unless it's Woodward. Anyways, let's close things out here. I'll give you a second here, Arif, to promote whatever you want. I know you got a couple fires in the kiln. Is that how it goes? I don't know. Just promote stuff.
It's like each kiln has like one fire.
You know what? I'm about to invent the double fire kiln.
All right, cool. Like they'll merge together into. I hope you realize.
No.
Anyway. So you can find my work at ProFootballNetwork.com. I just released a bunch of quarterback tiers. Again, I did not rank the Falcons quarterbacks out of protest for how they're using Kyle Pitts and not because I forgot to copy and paste that part into the document.
Arif Hasan is my favorite football writer.
Jared Goff is in there somewhere. I encourage you to find him. I also wrote about Christian Kirk and how he's making everybody who made fun of the contract look bad right now. It was actually going to be a piece that also included Amon-Ra St. Brown and Noah Brown, but I didn't have enough time, and I wanted I was going to be able to see Amon-Ra St. Brown in person anyway, so maybe I can just write a piece dedicated to him. Either way, both those pieces are up right now at ProFootballNetwork.com. You can check them out. And I'm going to have Jeremy on Norse Code in a little bit. And then I'm going to get to make fun of the Lions for real in front of a Vikings-friendly audience. So, check that out. And then if you wanted to get mad at me, you could do me after that gets released for sure.
Perfect. Well, Arif, appreciate you joining us. Congratulations, by the way, again on the new gig. If I can take a minute and actually be sincere on this podcast, you deserve it. You've long been one of our favorite guests here, and yeah, I'm always happy to see good people go good places.
I really appreciate that, man. Thanks a lot.
And appreciate everyone listening. Appreciate Ryan for being here and all the live audience and those of you listening in the podcast. Thank you for listening. We will do our post-game podcast here live on Twitch, twitch.tv/Pride of Detroit. You can always find us on any of your podcast platforms as well. But until next time, thank you for watching. It's chaos. Be kind.